Hi guys, my name is Jim Cage and today I want to talk about Spectre. The best part of the new Bond movie is its beginning. Director Sam Mendes, who also did Skyfall, opens with a very impressive sequence shot in which we see Bond dressed up at the Mexican holiday Day of the Dead. We follow him through the masses, into a hotel and then onto a rooftop until he finds the guy he needs to put out. Very nicely done and followed by a very exciting helicopter action scene. But then, first the disappointing new Bond song Writings on the Wall by Sam Smith that for me had no Bond vibe to it at all. And yeah, a story that's not that gripping, action sequences that aren't that exciting and some other flaws as well. So let's get into the details. With around 150 minutes, Spectre is the longest entry in the whole franchise so far, but unfortunately it feels that way. It tries to be in the fashion of all Sean Connery entries as it's quite elegant and restrained. Classic Bond you might hope, but it feels a little bit flat, lifeless and not very engaging. Spectre tries to tie all loose ends of the Craig era together. The villains, Le Chiffre, Mr. White and so forth, supposedly all work for a secret organization called Spectre.
Its name is Spectre.
That's actually quite nice because Spectre is a reminiscence to the beginning of the whole franchise and legal reasons prevented it from using that term for a long time now. But the story as it is presented and executed is almost a little boring. Bond is on its own, trying to find this secret organization, while Ralph Fiennes, the new M, has to deal with a new worldwide surveillance program that threatens to swallow the MI6. So it's actually not that far away from the latest Mission Impossible entry. Spectre tries to combine modern themes about global surveillance with the classic Sean Connery spy atmosphere, and it's not working that well. But don't get me wrong, I think Spectre is still an okay movie. Daniel Craig has some nice one-liners, nothing is really bad or cringeworthy, but overall it's too much of the same old formula, nothing new. Even the action set pieces are a little underwhelming. This was the most expensive Bond movie so far, and there's nothing we haven't seen before. It's quite the opposite. There's a car chase in the first third of it that feels so overused that I almost felt a little bored. In comparison, the car and then motorcycle chase in Rogue Nation was a blast. Like I said, the opening sequence was amazing and then later in the movie you have a fight scene in a train that stood out for me. Of course we had fight scenes in trains before in Bond and like so often this too pays homage to older entries, but the sheer force of it makes it thrilling. I think the main reason for that is Dave Bautista, who plays an old school henchman. He looks like a mountain and he destroys whatever comes in his way. When he's fighting Daniel Craig you feel with Bond for a moment and that's something that's missing for most of the movie. Unfortunately, there isn't enough Bautista in this movie. And there's also not enough Oberhauser in this movie. Oberhauser is the name of our villain, played by Christoph Waltz. He is portrayed as the grand, menacing puppet master of not only this movie, but the last Craig ones as well.
It was me, James, the author of all your pain.
Only problem, he has way too little screen time to fill this position. Apart from one very intense torture scene, he wasn't menacing at all to me. I thought the Rogue Nation villain was more on par with Ethan Hunt, even if Sean Harris played him way more eccentric and almost goofy than Christoph Waltz is doing here. Andrew Scott, who plays M's adversary C, is also not charismatic enough to fully gut me on an emotional, not only just following the plot kind of level. And the plot of the movie? Yeah, it follows the typical Bond patterns, and even the two Bond girls didn't do it for me this time. Monica Bellucci I like a lot, but she's in the movie for about 5 minutes. Lea Seydoux is a good actress as well, but her role is too cliché. She doesn't like Bond, she needs to be saved by him and then she falls for him. They try to establish her as Craig's next big love interest, but the chemistry between them and the material the script offers them is nowhere near as good as the Eva Green relationship from Casino Royale. A thing that also bothered me a lot are the colors used in this movie. Like in so many other modern blockbusters, the colors are very subdued. When you pay attention to it, you will notice that the movie for most of the part tends to be very monotonous. It only rotates between yellow and blue shades. To oversimplify it, London and everything involving snow is very blue, and Mexico, Rome and Morocco are yellow. Sure, the heat on one side and the cold, rainy or snowy weather on the other side make those choices seem to be logical, but it's not that simple. Because you don't have to soak everything in just 2 tones, you could use so much more and still create an atmospheric, elegant looking modern spy thriller. Where Spectre really begins to struggle is the last act. Instead of a cohesive forward-moving chain of events, the actional finale seems a little bit random. We're presented with a very worn-out and just stupid damsel in distress situation. There must be, of course, a deadline, and Bond is on his own again. Also, it takes place in an old abandoned building in London that played no role in the story before. And you might guess it, there's a bomb involved and Craig has to deal with a collapsing building again, like in Casino Royale. Presumably that was the whole idea, with Seydoux somewhat playing the part of Eva Green's character in that situation. But it's not very exciting because it doesn't feel justified, not emotionally and not story-wise. The same goes for the final confrontation with Christoph Waltz's character. Alright, that was a lot, but the movie in the end was a disappointment for me. But it doesn't mean that I wasn't enjoying myself from time to time. I really liked Bautista, I thought the humor was working fine, I'm glad there were no super exaggerated gadgets, and there was a pretty great little scene with a little mouse in the middle of the movie. You will definitely know what I mean when you go see it. Casino Royale is still the best of the Daniel Craig Bonds for me, and it's even on top with the best ones of the whole franchise. While Quantum of Solace had many problems, it was also the shortest one, and in hindsight a quite unique, extremely fast-paced action ride. I know Skyfall is greatly appreciated, but I wasn't so much into that one as well. At the moment I think Spectre is weaker, so unfortunately for me it's the weakest one of the Daniel Craig Bonds. But again, still a solid action movie. What do you think about James Bond's newest entry and also the Daniel Craig ones in general? Please tell me in the comments below. James Bond will return, and so will I.